Good evening, welcome to ITV News. This is Wednesday night's calendar.
Hello, here are tonight's main stories.
Fresh hope for justice. The family of a Dronfield woman killed by a hit-and-run driver in Tenerife win their fight to get the criminal investigation reopened.
I just think he's a coward for what he did. To get out of that van and look at what he'd done and get back in and drive off. You just hope that now this case has been reopened, that hopefully they will find the van and hopefully they'll find him.
A mother, her daughter and their pet escaped serious injury in this dog attack in Sheffield. Police say it highlights the potential dangers of irresponsible owners.
On the buffers, despite Yorkshire's leg of HS2 being scrapped years ago, homeowners living along the cancelled route say they're still caught in limbo.
They have to stay put. They can't even say switch a fixed rate mortgage. A white elephant of HS2 is dead and buried. They need to do the right thing, scrap it completely, lift the blight and let people move on with their lives.
Hello, how are you doing? It is myself, Becky Measures, and the Mother Hubbard ship is here as well.
And breast of friends. Now, this mum and daughter team, who've both had preventative surgery to beat cancer, are sending out a new message of hope. Hello, thanks for joining us. First tonight, there's fresh hope for the family of a North Derbyshire woman who was mown down and killed by a hit-and-run van driver in Tenerife, where she'd been enjoying a holiday with her loved ones.
Michelle Exton suffered fatal injuries by the roadside and her mother was seriously injured. The driver has never been found. Despite this, the Spanish authorities officially closed their investigation after just 9 working days.
Now, after a campaign by Michelle's family, the case has been reopened, and along with it, the hope that she will finally get justice. Here's Martin Fisher.
Happier times for the family of Michelle Exton, seen here greeting her daughter Sophia. Memories now of a loving mum and daughter that Sophia and her grandmother Anne, who was also injured in the crash, cherish.
I think there's just been nothing but all of us just crumbling, to be quite honest, as a family. So we lost my granddad 6 months before, then my mum, and then it's kind of gone from us having like a really big, close family to us all just in like the midst of grief.
Michelle from Dronfield was on holiday with her mum last December when both women were hit by a white van as it mounted the pavement in southern Tenerife.
And then I remember looking round for Michelle, because she weren't at side of me. And Michelle were a few feet further down the road. I crawled over to her. I could see she were in a bad way, Michelle. And it's all really a bit of a blur because I didn't see the van.
Witnesses reported the driver of the van, a white, bald man, got out of the vehicle after the crash. He saw the 2 women before muttering in Spanish, getting back in and driving away, leaving his wing mirror behind.
I hope there will be some justice. I just think he's a coward for what he did. To get out of that van and look at what he'd done and get back in and drive off. Whether he was scared or not, of course he's going to be scared. He's just knocked 2 people down.
Yet despite witnesses, a judge stopped the investigation after just 9 days, meaning police couldn't investigate further. Now, after legal efforts both here and in Spain, it's been reopened.
I've not had a case involved where it's been reopened. But then again, Martin, I've not had a case where an investigation was closed so quickly after such a severe accident. We have been able to speak with some of the witnesses involved. For instance, the people driving behind the car that hit Michelle and Anne. But it's really important that people come forward.
The family hope, even after almost a year has passed, reopening the case will push it back into the public domain.
I need people to really think about if you were in that situation and help, and hopefully we'll get somewhere. Even if we can find the van, it's a step closer. It's all these things that can be put together.
The last year has been the worst of their lives for Michelle's family. Fresh hope for them now. They may finally receive both justice and closure. Martin Fisher, ITV News in Dronfield.
And we'll keep in touch with Michelle's family and let you know about any developments that happen.
Yes, of course we will. Thank you. Our police have released shocking footage of a mother protecting her 1-year-old daughter and her pet dog as they were attacked by a Staffordshire Bull Terrier in Sheffield.
Quite shocking pictures. The incident happened on Richmond Road earlier this month after the bull terrier broke free from its owner and became violent. Now, the victim's dog needed treatment from a vet. Both her and her daughter received what police described as superficial injuries.
Well, officers seized the dog at the scene, but it was later returned to its owner with conditions and guidance. They said the owner is now going through restorative justice for the harm caused to the victims. South Yorkshire Police said the incident highlighted the potentially deadly consequences of failing to keep dogs under control.
Next tonight, homeowners in part of South Yorkshire say that they're still living in limbo as the uncertainty about the future of HS2 high-speed rail continues. Now, the Yorkshire leg of the project was scrapped some 18 months ago, and now, with costs running over £100 billion, the prospect of it coming to north of England, even at all, is quite simply under question.
Well, in Mexborough, there are those who hope the Prime Minister will kill off the idea of bringing high-speed rail north of Birmingham altogether, as Michael Billington reports.
Built just over a decade ago, it was a glimmering prospect for families or those looking to get on the property ladder. Today, the ghost of what was to be the eastern leg of HS2 has taken the shine off the Shimmer estate.
Although the eastern leg's gone, Mexborough's still blighted, still safeguarded, still in abeyance. People can't even switch fixed rate mortgages, can't move on. So it's not done at all.
The section from the East Midlands to Leeds was due to cut straight through the middle of this cluster of 200 or so houses. That was shelved in 2021. But land which people's homes sit on remains safeguarded by the government, preventing it from being sold or built on in case they want to revive plans for high-speed rail in Yorkshire in the future.
It's unacceptable for the government to keep blighting an area when the whole thing, the white elephant of HS2, is dead and buried. They need to do the right thing, scrap it completely, lift the blight and let people move on with their lives.
Are they coming or aren't they coming? They haven't said yea or nay yet, have they?
Geoffrey Schofield's home is also in what was the path of the rail line. He says keeping his home safeguarded with no clarity on whether it will ever be built leaves him living in limbo.
They feed you little bits just to keep you happy, isn't it? It's like throwing a dog a bone, innit? Just keep it quiet. You know, hello, wants to buy my house? Do you want to buy it? It's for sale if anybody wants it. There's only HS2 and what they give for it.
HS2 has had a bumpy journey from the start. When the company was set up in 2009, it had a budget of £55.7 billion. 5 years later, a leaked review revealed it could cost almost twice that. But even with nearly double the budget, the government scrapped the eastern leg 18 months ago, and now the Birmingham to Manchester leg is looking uncertain as well.
Great, thank you so much.
But Northern mayors meeting in Leeds today said failing to deliver HS2 in full would leave swathes of the north with Victorian-age transport infrastructure. They've written to the Prime Minister calling for a commitment to delivering that and Northern Powerhouse Rail in full.
Just make a decision. Just make a decision about the future of transport connectivity in this country so everybody can get on. Now, ultimately, I need the government to make that decision and invest in the north.
It's economic vandalism. Businesses of West Yorkshire are telling me that they need certainty and commitment in these big infrastructure projects, not this stop-start that we've seen from Rishi Sunak.
You would expect any sensible government to be looking at its major projects on a regular basis, and I know that that's what the Chancellor is doing.
Spades are already in the ground, as the government would say, delivering the first phase of HS2 in the south. The question of whether it will ever make its way north remains unanswered tonight, creating uncertainty for some homeowners in this part of South Yorkshire about exactly what their futures might hold.
And we can talk to Michael Billington now in Mexborough. And Michael, many people quite simply have been left in limbo, as you've said. What's the government had to say about this, though?
Well, I think it's fair to say that they are leaving their options open. Just because they don't plan to build an eastern leg of HS2 right now doesn't mean that a future government won't change its mind and decide to build one, pardon the pun, at some stage further down the tracks. The Department for Transport has told us it's important we safeguard properties until final decisions are taken. We recognise the impact on some residents, which is why our package of compensation schemes goes far beyond what the law requires. So perhaps they are leaving the door open to a Yorkshire version of HS2 at some stage in the future. But given what it's already costing, over £100 billion worth of taxpayers' money, I don't think that will be happening anytime soon.
Michael in Mexborough, thank you.
Now you're watching Calendar. Thanks very much for staying with us tonight. Still to come on the programme. We head out on the road and test some potentially life-saving motorbike gear, and we find out why the government's being urged to make it available to all.
And there's a few leaves on the ground now, but plenty still on the trees. Not the best combination for a 45 to 55 mile an hour wind. All the latest on Storm Agnes and the forecast for the next few days a little later on.
But first, police divers are searching the River Ouse for a 16-year-old girl who's gone missing in York. Leah was last seen by her friends a week ago. CCTV footage has picked up the teenager standing at the edge of the river near Lendal Bridge, and a mobile phone has now been found in the water. Police say Leah's family are being kept updated on developments.
The widow of a soldier from North Derbyshire who took his own life 5 years after serving in Afghanistan has met with the Veterans Minister, calling for more help for veterans with PTSD.
Johnny Cole was found dead in Parkland near his home in 2018. An inquest at Chesterfield Coroner's Court heard the Army had failed to diagnose him with PTSD.
Teresa Cole is now campaigning to help improve the lives of veterans suffering with the disorder. Amelia Beckett reports.
Johnny Cole knew that joining the army would put his life at risk. But after surviving a rocket attack in Afghanistan, it was returning home, his widow says, which tragically led to his death.
He came home and was completely different. Wasn't the man I married at all.
After one bombing, Teresa says Johnny was asked to collect the bodies and body parts of his fellow soldiers. Horrors which she says led to multiple suicide attempts before he took his life in 2018. An inquest into his death heard the army failed to formally diagnose him with PTSD, a failing Teresa is now fighting to put right.
He listened to me.
She's now met with the Minister for Veterans, Johnny Mercer, in a bid to improve support.
You know, I'm here today because my husband was a veteran and I want to see more help available to veterans, especially ones who are suffering with their mental health.
The sooner you seek help, the better the prognosis.
Robert Marsh works for the charity Combat Stress. He says one of the biggest challenges is how long it can take for veterans to access support.
We still see that the average length of time that veterans wait between leaving the armed services and seeking help is stubbornly still at about 13, 14 years. There is a lot of help out there, but how do you know that you've got complex PTSD? And it's trying to coordinate some of the help that those veterans know exactly where to go.
The Ministry of Defence told us, "We hugely value our service personnel and veterans. We recognise that their service can have serious impacts on their health and well-being, which is why the MOD offers mandatory mental health training, a 24-hour helpline, peer-to-peer support after traumatic incidents, and continued access to mental health support after leaving service." Now, the Veterans Minister has gone one step further.
He's going to, with myself, go around different organisations and we're going to address the matter head on and see what the veterans of Northern Ireland think and what changes they'd like to see made.
Teresa says her husband died after he was failed by the institution he loved. She's now fighting to stop that happening to anyone else. Amelia Beckett, ITV News.
Now, with winding roads and stunning scenery, large parts of Yorkshire are a real magnet for motorcyclists. But sadly, it means they can be a hotspot for accidents too.
And if the worst does happen, one piece of kit which can help save lives is an air jacket. Now, although unlike bike helmets, they're not exempt from VAT, and campaigners say that needs to change.
James Webster has been looking at the difference they make and tried out an air jacket for himself.
Lee Vigor loves the freedom of riding his motorbike. He's been riding professionally since 2009, but a crash in 2018 left him with potentially life-threatening injuries.
Unfortunately, I didn't walk away. I did snap my left leg off and I did break my right hip. But they can be fixed, they can be replaced. You can carry on living. But I do believe if I hadn't have had that air vest on that day, you can't replace organs and you can't replace a spine. At worst, I wouldn't be here. At best, I would be a paraplegic in a wheelchair, depending on my loved ones to look after me for the rest of my days.
It was an item of clothing similar to this that Lee was wearing.
It's not going to hurt you, it's just the most powerful bear hug you've ever had.
And Peter Riley's offered me a demonstration of one of the jackets his company distributes. Oh! The lanyard is usually connected to the bike. If the rider comes off, it triggers the inflation.
And I can feel that in my back now. That's holding it tight.
Once it's activated, it's inflating in 0.09 seconds to full inflation, which is very fast, but it needs to be. When bikes are going 60 miles an hour, they're going 88 feet per second. So it's got to go quick, but they do go quick. But because they hold your spine straight, they eliminate violent neck roll, which is caused by the trauma of the crash. And they eliminate altogether hyperextension, which is very bad for you.
Air jackets can cost in excess of £500, and the price can be a barrier for some. We've been chatting to bikers at Revs and Relics Cafe in Maltby.
I've done the research into the science. They do work, they do save lives, but for people like myself, the initial payout for one is they're just astronomical at the minute.
One for myself and my wife, because I thought, do you know what, being on bikes, you've got to do this.
I think the air jackets protect a lot of the internal organs and the neck, which is what tends to kill riders when they have a road traffic collision. So I think they're an essential bit of kit.
Although bikers make up just 1% of road users, statistics show they account for 20% of fatalities. That's why the road safety charity I Am Road Smart wants the government to make air jackets exempt from VAT to make them more affordable.
If you look at helmets that motorcyclists are required to wear, because those conform to a specific safety standard, they will be VAT exempt. And we would like to see the same sort of thing applied to air vests and air jackets, and hopefully when we get to that point we will start to see more and more motorcyclists using them, and we think that will save lives.
But the government says it has no plans to extend VAT relief from helmets to air jackets, and says it's promoting a road safety strategy that demonstrates how both drivers and bikers can prevent crashes from happening. James Webster, ITV News.
Certainly look good, don't they?
Looks like a great idea, yes, just need to be more affordable, don't they?
Now, the ITV Evening News continues here at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Lucrezia Millerini.
A 15-year-old girl stabbed to death on her way to school. In Croydon in South London, a bus driver and passerby tried to save her life. Police say a teenage boy believed to be known to the victim has been arrested. Also ahead, Bandit Britain. Retailers come together to tackle the sharp rise in shoplifting. We have an exclusive report. And Mike Tindall and his fellow rugby stars show prisoners the power of sport. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
We will, Lucrezia. Thank you very much indeed. Time for some sport now. And Mansfield Town are into the fourth round of the League Cup for just the second time in their history. The Stags were on the brink of being knocked out by Peterborough. Striker Lucas Akins, though, kept his nerve to score a 93rd minute spot kick, which then sent the game to penalties. Keeper Christy Pym was then the hero. The former Peterborough goalie saved 2 penalties against his former side, which then allowed David Keeler-Dunn to smash home the winner.
Meanwhile, Bradford City's run in the Cup came to an end at the hands of Middlesbrough. The Bantams were beaten 2-0 by the Championship side at Valley Parade.
Right, time for the weather, and here's Kerry. And where's Storm Agnes? Has she arrived?
That's the question. Not the first time someone's asked me that today, for sure. Yeah, we do have a name. We do have a named storm. Definitely not many weather photos sent into the inbox today. That is for sure. I mean, there she was at midday, beautiful, just to the west of the UK. And the Met Office did therefore name this storm a couple of days ago Agnes, which is the first one of our storm season. Of course, we had to wait a whole year last year for Storm Anthony, which was just last month. But Agnes kicks off our autumn-winter season as we head through into the next couple of days. Now, there's two things. The Met Office are in collaboration with the Danish and the Irish Met Service, and so it's any one of those could name. So even if we do name one, which we have named one, it might not even be for our patch, which hopefully this graphic explains. So it's certainly western parts of the UK and out towards the Isle of Man and the Irish Sea, where we're expecting those really fierce gusts and outbreaks of fairly heavy and persistent rain. So when most of us are in this top one here, which is, gusts of 50 miles an hour. It's a gusty night, it's an unsettled night, but not quite what we'd expect to the west. So yes, you've heard about the storm. It will be very blowy overnight tonight, but nothing as dramatic as it is further west. So what is happening to us? We've already had this area of rain, got a brief respite over the last few hours, and there's a second pulse of rain coming through. So there will be some heavy, intense pulses of rain, but I think for us, it's the lee gusts. So it's the downward winds that rush over the mountainside and come down the eastern slopes that we are expecting. So over the next few hours, and certainly into the early hours, expect the strongest of gusts for us, those lee gusts to eastern slopes of the Pennines and maybe over the coast. So it's a blowy old night, a noisy old night, but nothing as dramatic as further west, if that makes sense.
Right, so blowy, not stormy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Full forecast coming up shortly. Finally, though, you may remember how Wendy Watson made history 30 years ago when she became the first woman in Britain to have both breasts removed in what was preventative surgery. Well, her daughter Becky underwent the same procedure after finding out that she had a 90% risk of developing breast cancer too.
Well, now, after years of working to raise awareness of the disease, they've found a brand new way of getting their message across. Our reporter Astrid Quinn went to meet them.
Mother, daughter, breast of friends podcast. Hello, how are you doing?
Talking about breasts is what this mother-daughter duo do best. And although it's all smiles in the studio, the new podcast covers the very tough reality of coping with hereditary cancer.
So at 22, I had my genetic test, which obviously I was positive. I do carry the BRCA1 gene, and at 24 I also had a preventative double mastectomy, and at that time I was the youngest to ever have it done.
From being a child, Becky was aware of the gene that ran in her family. It's after her mum made history, becoming the first to have a double mastectomy before being diagnosed with cancer.
It is now 30 years since I had the surgery, so I'm still here, having a great life 30 years later. So for that, I have to be grateful. That 97% of the population who carry one of these gene faults aren't aware. So we want to reach the people that don't know.
The podcast aims to encourage others to go for screening, with special guests sharing their journeys throughout the episodes.
There's so many people out there that don't know, and we need to let them know, because we had no idea. We'd never even heard of TP53 before we got our diagnosis. So the chances are people have never heard of it either. So we need to let them know.
Not one size fits all. We say there's a lot. Not everybody has been as lucky as we are, and we recognise that and we understand that. And if we can be in a position where we can just give them a little bit of happiness and a bit of a smile, then now I'm going, that to me is probably like the most beautiful moment of doing this podcast. But also, what was fundamentally set up in the first place was for me and Mum to make memories together, to have a laugh together, to share her story, has now turned into something a lot bigger than that, because of how important this message is.
In sharing their story, the pair hope to help others with theirs, all the while spreading a little laughter along the way. Astrid Quinn, ITV News.
Wendy and Becky there, they've obviously got such a strong bond, haven't they?
They certainly have. No wonder after being through all of that. Really amazing. Now then, let's get that weather from Kerry.
good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello again. Yes, a wet and windy spell working its way through quite quickly for the first part of the night. It was fairly nondescript first thing this morning, grey skies, but it took a while for the cloud to really build and the rain to come in and the winds to whip up. But for this evening and certainly the first half of the night, it's a noisy old night, certainly over higher ground with spells of rain, but it will ease off and become bright and dry for most of us into tomorrow, but still staying fairly blustery, but the wind's easing. So Agnes does quite quickly push northwards. There'll be another low coming through tomorrow night and then actually high pressure building for the start of the weekend. But then this area of low pressure brings a wet and windy spell Saturday night, hopefully improving again during Sunday. So lots of weather going on over the next few days. Over the next few hours, heavy pulses of showery rain pushing onto the Pennines and north and eastwards. And yes, those lee gusts, the gusty winds down eastern slopes of the Pennines and the Peak District. But everything easing a little bit towards dawn, still gusty and blustery, mild, but mostly dry as we head into Thursday. 7:02 and 6:51 are your sun times for tomorrow. So apart from an odd shower, it's a mostly dry day tomorrow. There will be bright, if not sunny spells, cloud coming and going, and the winds quite blustery and gusty to start with, but easing off a little bit as we head into the afternoon, and temperatures around average for the time of year. And then tomorrow night, that wet and windy spell works its way through, probably a little bit more significant for us before pushing away, but it does leave a decent day with high pressure building on Friday, plenty of sunshine, bit of a westerly breeze, and highs above the average for the time of year. On Saturday, chilly start, plenty of sunshine, wet and windy spells Sunday, improving through the day.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
There you go, always something to look forward to. Thank you. I tell you what I'm not looking forward to.
Go on, what?
The late bulletin at 11 o'clock tonight. It's on late. I'm on late.
Oh, I'm looking forward to watching it. Definitely. Have a good evening.
I'll see you later.
Good night.
Bye-bye.